Hello and welcome to another installment of The Partial Historians. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Rad.
And I'm Dr. G. Welcome, everybody.
Join us as we trace the history of Rome from the founding of the city.
Until its bitter end.
Exactly. We're so far off that, though. There's no need for us to be bitter right now.
Oh, yeah, doom and gloom, though. You know.
Now, we've come out of a fairly interesting and turbulent time period, Dr. G, at least in my account.
Your time period is you're ready for the next big thing in Roman history. I've got so many more details before we get there.
I'm all for the details, but I'm just going to give a quick recap of where I was up to and
Please
therefore
do.
where the world is up to with what Rome is doing. So in my account, we've just emerged from 458. And in 458, the big thing I suppose that we should make our listeners aware of is that Cincinnatus was dictator.
Hello.
Yes.
That's a very powerful position for one man to hold.
Exactly. But because he is Cincinnatus and he is quite the man, he was quite willing to give up his power once all the business that needed to be attended to was attended to.
And what needed to be attended to, according to Livy?
Well, a number of things, really. I mean, obviously, military was the primary reason for him getting the dictatorship. But whilst he was in the dictatorship, quite the scandal emerged domestically. One of the tribunes, who I must admit I have been backing, because of course I'm on the side of the tribunes. Of course I'm on the side of the tribunes.
Go for the man.
Exactly. One of the tribunes of that year, who's been in the picture now for quite some time, one Marcus Volscius. This is the guy that had the brother that was supposedly killed by Cincinnatus' son, or one of his sons.
Yeah,
Caeso.
awkward.
Yeah. Turns out he fibbed.
It was a lie.
Well, okay, I should correct that. I still, even though Livy records remarkably little detail about this, and so it seems to indicate that, case closed. I still feel like this must be a patrician setup, and it's just taken them 5 years to get the goods on him.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah, but, Livy tells me there are lots of witnesses that, basically the timelines don't add up. That Caeso couldn't have been in two places at once, that the brother couldn't have been where Volscius said he was, so did Caeso kill him? Turns out, probably not. So Cincinnatus stayed in office long enough to make sure that this guy got his just desserts.
Wow, okay. Nothing like becoming dictator to get a little bit of family vengeance.
Well, yeah. I don't blame him in a way, because after all, when Caeso skipped town, Cincinnatus lost a huge chunk of his property.
Was reduced to being a peasant farmer, essentially.
Yes.
And always shirtless.
It allowed him to do his noble rise as a silver fox of the Republic. Anyway, so that's what had been happening in my account by the end of 458. Now, our timelines don't always match up perfectly.
They don't. Where I got up to with Dionysius's account is that he sort of moved into this hagiography of Cincinnatus and talked about all of his virtues.
Naturally.
Which was very exciting. And that was kind of where he finished off the year. And so we slide nicely from that point into 457 BCE.
Okay.
So it's time for some new consuls.
Oh, yes. Okay. In my account, the new consuls of this year are one Quintus Minucius and Marcus Horatius Pulvillus. I was trying to say that Latin-wise. It doesn't work. Marcus Horatius Pulvillus. So much easier to say. How about your account?
Okay, so we've got Quintus Minucius, Esquilinus, a patrician, the brother of Lucius Minucius, Esquilinus Augurinus, consul of the previous year.
Exactly. I was going to say this Minucius name is familiar to us. Yes.
Are you feeling mucusy? I am minucusy.
Yeah.
Keeping it in the family. And yes, I agree. We've got Gaius or Marcus Horatius Pulvillinus, consul for the second time, previously consul in 477. So, 20 years ago. Back again. So he famously fought in the Battle of Cremera, for our keen listeners who have been paying attention to the chronology. And that was the year when the people of Veii also came down and occupied the Janiculum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bad times all around.
Yeah, so he followed them and wasn't able to quite finish them off.
Yes.
And but he left a bit of a legacy there.
Yeah.
he's back for some more consulship.
Well, that might explain actually why there's such a huge gap in his career, don't you think? I mean, it's not like Cromera went all that well.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, look, it takes time to come back from something like that.
Exactly.
20 years.
That was his Gallipoli. A reference
Wow.
that will probably only make sense to Australian and New Zealand listeners. Look it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, safe to say, things did not go well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've got some disagreement in our sources about
Cincinnatus is dictatorship.
Well, yeah, like what's going on? I mean, it seems to be over for now.
Yeah.
But is anything truly over in Rome? Nobody knows. So this year, 457, gets off to a bit of a murky start. There seems to be a whole bunch of issues outside of Rome. So there are reports coming in that the Sabines have occupied the country between Fidene and Crustumerium. What a place. So we've talked about Fidene before. That's come up. And it is north...
Not for a while, though.
Not for a while, no.
Yeah.
But it is north of Rome.
Yeah.
And sort of like pretty directly north. So if you travel north, you'll get there. That's fine. And then this Crustumerium. I just love
Such
the
a gross name. It
Such
sounds like a
gross
skin
name.
disease.
Yeah. Well, the Sabines are occupying it, so
Right.
that tells us everything we need to know. But it is to the northeast. And it's about the same distance from Fidene that Fidene is from Rome.
Right.
So we're talking about a big chunk of land being occupied by the Sabines. So people up there are not very happy, and they've come down to Rome being like, excuse me?
This episode's really taking me back. We're talking about so many things we haven't talked about in such a long time. People who have been absent. Enemies who have been absent.
Yeah, look, there's nothing like hearing from your crusty friends in the north. And it turns out that the Aequians have also continued to be the thorn in the side of Rome.
I was going to say, the Aequians are the ones that actually come up first in Livy's account. They apparently carry out a night attack on a Roman garrison at Corbio, in my account.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Corbio is right near Tusculum, and Rome has been in and down in that direction for the last couple of years at least, and this was part of the issue that required Cincinnatus to become the dictator
Exactly,
the
yeah.
year before. So this area is a bit of a hotbed for crisis.
Enemy action, yeah.
Yeah. And so Corbio is just a little bit to the east of Tusculum, and so it's on the fringes of that mountainous area to the southeast of Rome. So Rome is really being sort of called in two directions, north and southeast.
Now I'm curious to know, because there's a definite there's something I have to mention from Livy's account before we delve too deeply into the military action of this year, and that is that Livy sets this year up with the typical thing, Dr. G. Oh, you know what I'm going to say. I feel like we should put this on a t-shirt. The law about the laws. That comes before any of this. Because typically, what Livy's trying to highlight, and maybe this is what actually happened, but what gets highlighted by these military crises is the levy, which is the classic way that the patrician plebeian clash gets highlighted.
I mean, the patricians really rely on the levy, which is basically enrolling all of the able-bodied plebeian men into a sort of a standing force for the year.
Yeah.
They don't have a professional army as such. They've got this levied sort of citizen army that they have to recruit on a year-to-year basis depending on the crisis that they face.
I'm feeling strong parallels with the rural fire service in New South Wales right now. Again, look it up, people.
We are living through a crisis in Australia. That is a footnote.
Yeah. But hey, doesn't hurt to mention on the podcast because it'll be now preserved for posterity. This was not a good time when we were recording this podcast. Yeah. Anyway. So in my account, the Tribunes, everything's fine at first with external issues. And as is so often the case when the Romans are distracted by something external, internal problems arise. In this case, the same Tribunes who are in power again, mostly led, I think, by Wiginius and Volscius, although they're not mentioned by name specifically here, who are again agitating for this law about the laws, to have the legal basically the legal system and codes and that sort of thing written down somewhere so that everybody has equal access and knowledge of these things, or at least the potential to do so. And it's at this point that the Aequian attack happens. The consuls therefore decide that they need to carry out the levy because they need to head out. And then the tribunes start fighting the levy because this is their only real leverage usually, okay? And Livy tells me that the consuls were actually about to be defeated in carrying out the levy by the tribunes if it weren't for the fact that there's another layer. And that is, of course, the Sabines kicking up the storm.
Oh, yes. I see.
And
okay.
that changes the direction again.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can see how Livy and Dionysius are playing with the same chess pieces, but moving them in a very different way.
Okay, please tell me.
Yeah, so we've got, according to Dionysius, like he talks about all of this sort of stuff. So we've got this military problem. It's pretty clear what we need to do. And then he moves into talking about the tribunes.
Okay.
And he does let us know by name that we've got Verginius is named, and we can assume that...
oh, sorry, not Volscius. Duh, I just realised that. Volscius is gone now.
Well, I mean, we assume that Volscius Victor is still involved because it's hard to tell that he's not. Because what Dionysius says is Verginius and his fellow tribunes who held the same power for the 5th year... Which kind of suggests that all of the same tribunes are coming back into power.
That's what I was thinking, but then I realised Volscius was condemned at the end of 458 and sent to exile. So I think they mean those other nameless tribunes.
The nameless ones.
That was just me getting caught up in the fact that they've been in power forever.
So there's a group of at least 4 who have continuously held the tribunician.
So Verginius is the named one that we've got who's been in power for like a number of years. Yeah. But Volscius is finally out of the picture. My apologies.
Yeah, but it does seem that there is a group of them. And,
definitely, yeah.
And interestingly, unlike the other magistries that we're seeing emerging, like the consulship and the nascent quaestorship, they seem to not have a rule about being able to hold the position on multiple occasions.
Yeah, which is what we see with the tribunes all the time.
Year after year. And so even though we get consuls holding the consulship more than once, they don't tend to do it in consecutive years.
No.
So that's interesting. So we've got this something quite different is happening with the tribune of the plebs at this point. And it's a problem for the patricians because this means that the same issues keep getting pushed.
Yes.
And the consuls change and new consuls have to navigate the same issue, but it's like they come at it with the same baseline level of starting idea. It's not like they've like built knowledge, consular knowledge over time that they pass down as some kind of secret that they pass on. Each consul decides the same course of action needs to be taken in order to deal with the tribune of the plebs and their requirements, which is basically to ignore them and to roll all of the plebeians under the levy.
Yeah,
absolutely. And this is exactly... what they decide to do. So the Senate gets together and they're like, okay, we've got a problem. And lo and behold, but who gets to speak first after preliminaries have been done?
Let me guess. Does his name begin with a C?
It does. It is none other than Cincinnatus.
Okay, yeah.
He is described as the wisest statesman and the ablest general. And... he comes up with what is going to be, of no doubt, a novel idea to you, I'm sure, which is that they should postpone the concerns of the citizens until after the pressing issue of the war has been dealt with.
They're so lucky, in a way, that they keep getting attacked by external enemies. Otherwise, this line just could not fly. See, this is an interesting thing in my account as well. We do definitely get this feeling that, okay, so Aequian threat, then we've got the levy, fight against the levy, looks like the consuls might lose it, then the Sabine attack, so then there has to be compromise because there's just too much of an external threat. In Livy's account, the tribunes agree to allow the levy, but there are conditions. And they've tried to do this before, so that's not shocking. But their condition is interesting in my account. I don't know if it's the same in yours. They say that there's just too few of them to really look out for plebeian interests, and instead they should have 10 tribunes.
Oh, look, it's going to take me all year to get to that piece of information.
Okay, fair enough. So continue to tell me what's going on in your account. Yeah.
Dear Lord.
The detail that Dionysius has on this.
The detail.
Yeah.
Well, some of it I do want to pull out a little bit because one of the things that Cincinnatus tries to do is to really appeal to ideas of Roman masculinity. Or at least this is the way that Dionysius of Halicarnassus presents it.
Right.
So he says that, like, if they don't defend their land, they'll lose the empire that they've developed so far.
The empire.
Yes, the empire. And it would be lost in a shameful and pusillanimous fashion.
Whoa.
I know. And I was like, wow. I'm like, that's a pretty fancy word. I'm going to check the Greek for that. And I'm glad I did, actually, because, I mean, basically, we're talking about a lack of courage or determination. That's what the English word means.
Yes.
But when you look at the Greek, it's actually andros, which is unmanly.
Well, we know anything about the Romans. We know they do not like to be unmanly.
Without manliness. So, like, do you really want to risk losing everything that we fought for together as a community because you're not men? So, you know, it really tries to, like, pull this line of, like, you know, our masculinity is on the line here. We need to man up and get on the battlefield.
I feel despondent because I kind of feel like I know this play is going to work.
He takes it further, though, because then he launches into this sort of, like, great sort of rhetorical moment where it's like, you know, the great patricians will go out there themselves. It doesn't matter if the citizens don't respond to the levy. You know, they can try to resist the levy if they want to, but we'll be there because we're the real Romans. And when we lose or whether we win, just you wait. Because we either go down fighting as the best patricians Rome has ever had, or we win and we come back and you sorry losers are going to regret it.
Okay. I do feel like this is definitely just empty words because you don't have the numbers, Cincinnatus. You just don't. That's the whole point of the levy.
So what's worse is that after he's done this is a great rhetorical speech within the Senate. The Senate is all very pleased. They're like, woo, we'll get in there. You know,
we'll go out by ourselves.
Yeah, old men in togas who are sort of struggling to stand up, like, I'll get in there.
And the hot young patricians are like, yeah, crushing beer cans on their forehead.
Oh, get him! Let me out! And so anyway, so they decide to call an assembly of the people. The populace believe that they're going to hear something about the law about the laws and the things that they've been arguing for, and that the tribunes, I mean, initially that's what the discussion was supposed to be about when the Senate decided to have the meeting.
Yeah.
And
they got distracted, as usual.
Yeah. So the people of the city just come in, they're like, oh, it's an assembly, we're going to hear something new for a change, this will be great. Instead...
Their poor little despondent hearts.
Yeah, so... Horatius is the one who gives the message.
Right.
Stands up and he's like, look, you know, it's definitely time to get the campaigning underway. And everybody's pretty displeased about that. The tribunes vocally are like, excuse me?
I believe we have some unfinished business.
I thought we were talking about the law about the laws.
We've been talking about it for decades.
Yeah, and the people get really whipped up.
Yeah.
So then Horatius has to come back out again. And he's like, you know what, guys? Here's the deal. You know, we're not going to give up our privileges.
Honest. Okay, yep. I admire his forthrightness.
You know,
yes.
if we let this go, we will have lost all of the advantages which we possess, whether inherited from our ancestors or acquired by our own toils. And we're not ready to do that.
Oh, the present day parallels really can't help but hit me over the head at this point. Listeners, please never forget that the powerful never give up their power willingly. Corporations, government.
And then we get into the rhetoric.
Yeah.
Because he's really honest in that moment, and I highlighted it, and I was like, that is the moment in history. It is the classic moment in history.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is the thing that would never happen these days. People pretend that they're making concessions. They never actually just come out and say, I'm not going to do that because it would mean that I would be less powerful.
Yeah. But the thing is, he does couch it in inclusive pronouns.
Okay.
He's like, our privileges.
Sure, yeah.
Our advantages.
This tiny group of wealthy patrician people.
And he's talking to the people, but he's really talking about the patricians. You know, like, what share do the plebeians have in the immense privilege that is Rome?
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. And so then he starts getting into the wartime rhetoric. You know, despite the struggle, we have a shield of hope with us. If the gods are watching, if Fortuna is watching, the gods will be on our side. And he basically sets up that rhetorical argument, which is, do you really want to be the people who stay with the women?
The gender dynamic.
Really? You want to be that guy?
Yeah, I think they do. In Roman times, I think they do, yeah.
So, you know, this is the classic sort of patriarchal move of like defining masculinity as the opposite of whatever women do.
Yeah. And you'd be better off working against your own interests than being embarrassingly aligned with women.
Yes.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to shame you by talking about gender into doing what is absolutely not in your best interest.
Yeah. So rather than let's talk about your rights.
Yes. Rather than let's just give you this freaking law against the laws.
Yeah. Rather than talking about how we might be able to build something into this system that benefits you.
Absolutely.
Let's question your masculinity.
Yeah. Let's make you insecure. Let's make you embarrassed. Let's make you angry.
Have you really thought that maybe you're not really a man? Because if you haven't, let me tell you, today's the day where you're not really a man.
Lift up your tunic and quickly do a check. Is there something between your legs or not?
Because if there is, you need to be on that battlefield, my friend, or else, I mean, you can show them to me, but I'm not sure I believe you.
Yeah, that's right.
Seeing ain't believing.
Yeah.
I need you to walk the walk.
Oh God, this makes me so sick.
So, I mean, there is a real lesson here, I think, particularly for men in this narrative, which is to not get caught up in narratives of masculinity. I mean, you're being sold a lie. They're asking you to do these things because they want you to be a particular way that might not be to your benefit.
It's actually really interesting because I teach all girls at the moment, and it is actually remarkable how quickly people latch onto gender differences and how much we struggle to see how the class issue. It's really, I find it very much, whether I'm teaching boys or girls, but if they are in like a single sex environment, as sometimes happens, in school environments, they really quite easily latch onto gender things and get caught up in exactly this kind of stuff, overlooking the class solidarity angle or the social inequality angle. And that's what I always have to drive home to them. It matters just as much, if not more, than anything you can say about gender, and yet we continually overlook it.
Yeah, and there's this classic sort of like Marxist position, which positions class as the driving conflict of society, and to a certain extent, it's a good argument. But gender is definitely used as a leverage point to either downplay the class struggle or to amplify that class struggle.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we can't discount the way that gender politics is also influencing the social and the political.
Gender absolutely is a huge issue, but I just find it that people get swept up in it so quickly, whereas really, like the people that the plebeian men have things in common with, in this instance with the law about the laws and all that kind of stuff, are their fellow, plebeian women, like the people who are in it together, the other people in this non-patrician body. It's not the lifestyle of these patrician men is far and away from what their experience is.
And I think the problem with this is that you can see how society is sort of finely grained on a bunch of like really clear categories, where a plebeian man is going to feel very strongly that he's got far more in common with a patrician man than he does with any woman, because of the way that the patriarchal system excludes women from politics.
Yes, and that's exactly, like, culturally, I totally get it. Like, yes, they actually probably do, because they are all part of a group that women do not belong to, which is people who have some rights, if not all the rights.
Yeah. So it's like, and so it gets into threats. Horatius eventually gets to threats.
Yeah.
So it's like, like what's going to happen if we all go out and we all do that Virtus thing and you guys all stay behind? And so he repeats that sort of Cincinnatus line of it's not good for you if we win and it's not good for you if we lose. Because if we win, we're coming back for you. And if we lose, the enemy is coming for you. And you think the enemy is going to care at all about your law, about the laws and these other petty things that you're asking about? They won't. They're going to sack the city and they're going to turn you into slaves or kill you. One way or the other, it's not going to work out. So
Look,
maybe you should think about that.
I'm not going to deny that is a very real possibility.
Maybe think about that.
Yeah.
And so in order to sort of illustrate his point, he then dramatically starts to bring out some really senior patricians. So like, the crotchety ones who are sort of, it would be terrible for them to be on the battlefield.
I've been here since the monarchy.
I remember when we had a king.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no.
Tarquin wasn't there.
And it's like, stop, man, stop. And these old patricians who are crying because, this is the Rome that they know and love. And it's failing before their eyes. And they're kind of like, I'm going to be out there. And it's just so sad that it's come to this. Like, what's my life been for?
Yourself, mostly.
Yeah. Horatius gets back into it again. So, if it's not already clear, we're in one of those episodes where Dionysius of Halicarnassus loves the speeches.
I was going to say, it's been a while since we had a good Dionysius speech fest.
Yeah.
I'm liking it, actually. Again, this episode is just full of nostalgia for me. It's taking me back.
And he's sort of like, are you going to let these old men take up arms when you have young, strong arms yourself? Like, what are you doing?
What about your legs? Huh?
Yeah. Anybody thought about the legs? Are they even going to make it? Virginius notices that the people are starting to sway.
Be swayed. Yes, of course, yes.
And he gets quite concerned.
Yeah. Well, he should be.
So he sort of storms back out again. We're like, give me the stage. I need to talk.
And he's known for being very fiery with his speeches.
Yeah, and look, he builds a new case, and he's like, we're not abandoning you, we're not betraying you.
No.
We've never really declined to go on any expedition. We've always done it.
Yeah.
But what we want is to have some semblance that we matter in this society.
Absolutely.
We're asking for something really small.
Just give me a little sign, boy.
Something, anything to show that you care, we need to have these safeguards in place so that there is a greater freedom and understanding about how the laws work in this place.
Absolutely.
It's very concerning. And
just some rules. Yeah. Rules and regulations.
And I'll level with you guys. We've been asking about this for a while, and we've got a really strong suspicion that you're never going to agree.
Well, yeah. I actually haven't done the math on this, but it has been ages.
It feels like a long time.
It's actually phenomenal how long this has been going on.
Yeah, look, you wanted to understand history, you want to get in it, you want to feel like you're living it. Oh boy, these episodes, I don't know how long we've been doing this.
I know, well, I honestly feel like I've never encountered stubbornness before until I've seen the patricians and their way of putting it off.
Year after year. So anyway, the people are clearly agitated, and Horatius sort of is like, well, if you've got a reasonable request, now's the time to make it, because I'm not going to deny you a reasonable request.
Yeah.
I'm like, uh-oh.
It's a trap.
Yeah, no consul's ever said that before. No. Wait a minute.
He's secretly thinking plebeian scum.
Virginius is like, let me just consult my fellow tribunes.
These nameless people that apparently have been serving alongside me.
Yeah. So they do a bit of a tribune huddle. Presumably everybody's watching while this goes on.
Radish.
They come back and they're like, you know what we would like? We would like to have a doubling of the tradition of the plebeian tribunate.
And we're back on track, Dr. G. Livy and Dionysius back in the game together. Yeah. It only took you, I don't know, 2 more pages. Yeah.
Yeah, so they said, we'd like, maybe, we've got 5, but it would be really great to have 10.
Yes.
Everyone's like,
Well, prepare to be surprised, listeners, because I've got something that you're definitely going to need that fainting couch for. So dust it off. Here it comes. They agree.
What?
I know. They say, all right. I mean, obviously it's because they feel they have no other option. But in my account, they agree, but they do have their own condition, which is that they don't want to see the same men in the position of tribune year after year, as we have been seeing for the past 5 years. Is that also one of the conditions in Dionysius?
Shock. Horror. I mean, the salient points are similar, but I've got some extra detail for you.
Okay. Hit me with it.
Yeah, so first of all, it turns out that this request to double the tribunes is sort of discussed amongst the Senate.
Okay, let me guess. They say despicable things.
Cincinnatus gets to have his say.
Excellent.
And, he's always been considered to be fairly harsh towards the plebeians.
But he deserves to be because he's really hot. He's a hot older man.
He's a hot old man,
Yeah.
never wears a shirt. This is true. He farms.
He farms,
Yeah.
he works with his hands.
In the sun.
In the summertime weather.
That man.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the plebeians have always felt that he has been very harsh with them. And
Well, I mean, I think it's a family thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't like Kaiser.
yeah,
Yeah.
he sort of whips them into line in ways that they don't appreciate, and he's very rhetorically forceful with them.
Yeah.
So they always worry about what he thinks.
Yeah.
And he basically comes out straight away and he's like, I think this is a great opportunity for
What?
the plebeians
to
have 5 extra tribunes.
Oh, wow.
I think this is great.
Okay, now I need my fainting catch.
And you're like, oh, really? And then we have Gaius Claudius, son of Appius Claudius.
Excellent.
Yeah.
For listeners who are just tuning in for the first time, number 1, what are you doing? Go back and listen to the episode. Number 2, the Claudians are known to be also fairly hardline patricians at this point in time.
They are.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I think this is a great idea.
Okay. I actually felt a little sick just because I feel like it's a trap.
It is a trap.
Okay.
It is a trap.
Yeah.
You want to know why it's a trap? Because he makes a long speech. Luckily, we don't have most of it. Dionysius has spared us that. But he points out that if they have more tribunes, they'll be easier to siphon off into factions that can't get stuff done.
Okay. Divide and conquer.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, look, this hasn't been the case for a little while because we have been so focused with this law on the law things, and there's been all sorts of personal drama for the tribunes as well, linked into everything. So we haven't seen this for a while, but there definitely were periods when we were talking about this conflict of the orders where it seemed clear that some of the tribunes of the plebs were totally in the pockets of the patricians. Like, that they were... And probably for... I mean, when I say good reasons, I mean as in... Probably because they saw more of themselves... because you can be a wealthy patrician. You can be a wealthy plebeian or whatever. They might have seen more in themselves or more of their own self-interest in the patrician cause, carrying favours, whatever, what have you. You know how it works. Backroom deals. Yada, yada.
Shake a hand here. Shake
Grease.
a hand there.
Grease a palm there. Exactly, yeah. It has been a while since we've dealt with this, but yeah, it is possible for tribunes to not be looking out for the best interests of the plebeians.
It is true.
Yeah.
And I should clarify, because actually, now that I'm looking at it more closely, Gaius Claudius is actually dead against this. He's not pro this. He thinks it's terrible because it's an obfuscation of all of the rules and regulations that are already in place. And it's Cincinnatus who notices that this isn't actually an opportunity. And he's like, Claudius, this could actually play in our favour, which is why we should allow it to happen.
And then they both said,
So the patricians are having a great time. They're like, really? That's all you're asking right now? You just want to double your number? You can have it. Have it. And they're like...
Well, I mean, to be fair, the tribunes haven't always achieved a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. I admire their ongoing efforts, but they don't always achieve a lot. So I guess doubling their numbers is kind of like small fry.
Well, and the sense in which they might be more ineffectual if there's more of them is...
To disagree amongst each other. Yeah.
I think is a valid point. And
Totally.
So it looks like they're doing a thing. And this means that the plebeians will definitely engage in the levy and they'll go and do the stuff that they need to do. And at the same time, the patricians haven't really done anything. of benefit for the
the
plebeians.
final thing that is interesting in terms of what happens in this whole scenario for me in Livy's account is that they have at least learned something, which is that I was going to use a very inappropriate analogy. I won't go there. But yeah, they've learned that it's dangerous to extract promises from patricians, consuls, the Senate, whoever, and then go off to war and then come back and expect your payment of whatever it is. And so the tribunician election is held straight away.
Oh, wow.
Because they're concerned that they're just going to go back on their word once the war is over. So that was, I thought, at least something which showed some awareness of, don't be stupid, take the payment up front. Anyway, and so
I've been doing this for 5 years
Exactly,
as a tribune, and what I can tell you is if we don't get this done now, it's just not going to get done, guys.
And so 10 men end up getting elected, and there are 2 from each class, and they say that from then onwards, they should continue to have 2 tribunes elected from each class, 10 in total. Yes.
So this leads us into sort of like the back end of the year. And I don't know about you, but for me, that gets wrapped up pretty quickly because once we get this domestic issue sorted out, the armies get sent out. Minucius heads to the Sabine territory. Horatius heads to the Aequian territory. The Sabines basically just retreat and allow everything to be pillaged, so that's a bit boring as a military
in my account,
thing.
Minucius can't even find them. They're just like in the wind. They're like, we never existed. We're just an excuse.
And Horatius sort of gets the large share of like military excitement because the enemy runs away and he gets the chance to like raise Corbio to the ground essentially before then going home.
Absolutely.
And then we're kind of like done with 457.
Absolutely. It always makes me think that really this military action was just an excuse for the domestic troubles to be...
I mean, certainly in terms of the narrative, it seems like we're in a state of constant warfare, but also the pressing domestic issue is really coming to a head now.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. G, so the end of the year seems like a good time to do the partial pick. Yes, indeed. The partial pick is where we wrap up the episode. The Romans have the chance to win a total of 50 golden eagles. We have 5 categories. Each one is worth 10 golden eagles. So, Dr. G, what is our first category to discuss?
Military clout.
Okay, well, this is a little tricky, isn't it? Given that we got so little detail.
I mean, they did well. They won everything.
That is true, but there's not a lot of actual military engagement. So
Oh, come on. They raised Corbio to the ground.
Yeah, but
it's at least
Sabines
are
just like gone.
Yeah, so half isn't bad. That's a 50%.
That's fine. Yeah, look, I feel like I'll give them like a 4.
Oh yeah, okay. Because they're pretty slow. I mean, it took them all year to get organised, as far as I can tell.
And they're not really adding anything. They're just like, re-establishing control, really. Okay, so that's a 4 for military clout.
All right, diplomacy.
Ooh, okay. Well, obviously there's not a lot of external diplomacy happening.
There's a lot of internal diplomacy.
There certainly is. Now, it's a bit evil, but we do at least get something done. Which is, and within a year, that's amazing.
I'm frankly flabbergasted.
Yeah. I feel like maybe a 6.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Just because it's a bit evil in that they're not really trying to resolve
Well, they're doing stuff for appearances, so I think that's an issue.
Yes.
So it's not a huge win, but it's progress.
It is progress.
Apparently,
it is. Well, I mean,
we haven't seen it.
At
not
least
be
the
progress
the plebeians can go home thinking we had a win today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What's our next category?
Expansion.
No.
That's a big fat 0.
That's a nothing.
All right. Just holding what they've got.
Yeah.
Virtus.
Okay.
Look, the patricians are really leveraging masculinity as a thing.
They are, but are they really
demonstrating
it? Yeah,
it?
I feel like it's a lot of talk about it.
But then they do go out and have some military victories.
This is true.
If there's any way to show virtus in ancient Rome, that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to give them like a 3 maybe, for like Cincinnatus having, I don't know, the usual kind of patriarchal talk and then the military victories. So I'd be willing to go that far.
All right.
It's not extraordinary. Yeah.
All right. And the citizen score, last of all.
Well, okay. There is something here. I mean, on the downside, they still have to serve in the army.
On the plus side, they've got 5 new representatives.
Yes. And I feel like they would feel more positive about that, even though there might be a secret motive on the part of the patricians for allowing that to happen.
Look, the patricians can have a plan, but they haven't yet demonstrated that they can control 10 tribunes.
Precisely. Yeah, exactly. Unity, Dr. G. Unity could triumph in the end. So I actually feel like you'd be feeling relatively okay.
I would at least give it maybe a 5, because it's like, I mean, yes, they had to go to war, but yes, they also got something, and the patricians actually agreed to something, which hardly ever happens.
And look, war isn't always, like, I do recognise, in this day and age, war isn't necessarily a terrible thing, because it does at least give you the chance to capture some booty and that kind of stuff. And, you know, again, as we talked about, in the Roman idea of masculinity, you know, being a warrior is a sign of your masculinity, is a sign of your identity, you know, your cultural identity. So it's not necessarily the worst thing. It's not like everybody necessarily hates it. It's just when they're doing it all the time. Yeah. All right. So should we give them a 5?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm afraid that's still a bit of a disappointing total, Dr. G. The Romans have only ended up with 18 golden eagles.
Oh, that is a solid fail, Rome.
Yeah. Well, you know, I feel like we do maybe have to adjust our scoring system, because I feel like when there isn't a lot of military stuff happening, which we don't really rate per se, it's always really terrible. But anyway.
But just you wait. There's going to be some great military stuff. We're getting there. They're just finding their feet in Italy at the moment.
Yeah, and look, you know what? The fact is, the Romans themselves would have wanted us to do it this way. they like military stuff.
Yes, we have to judge them by their own categories, and it turns out that they're terrible.
All right, well, thank you for joining me for another exciting year, Dr. G. I look forward to talking about 456.
Oh, yes. I'll see you next time. Hi listeners, Dr. G here. In the time between recording this latest episode and the release of this episode, the world has changed in incredible ways. We want to say a huge thank you to everybody on the front line supporting people with COVID-19, and to wish you all the very best for your health and safety. In addition to that, we'd like to thank our patrons: Adri, Dana, Joel, Justine, Roman, Savannah, Sharon, Shan, Tamara, and Zara. Thank you so much for your support, particularly in what is such a challenging time. Hopefully a little bit of Roman history is just the kind of light touch that most of us will need to get through what are becoming challenging times. Stick together, support your indie podcasts, and spread the word. Take care and stay safe. From the Partial Historians.